Welcome back, Paul Catalina and Pierre Nugent. I, as many of you know, am a Cowboys fan. And have been broken through the years. Pierre, you've never had to cover the Dolphins.
No, I have never had it. Thank goodness. They're lucky. They should be counting their blessings. I never had to cover that team.
Look, covering your favorite childhood team, which is why I will never, like, if somebody said, would you like to be in the locker room with the Red Sox or even FSU? Like, even FSU, I'd be like, you know what? I need to keep a wall up because the Cowboys have broken me. Mm-hmm. And, you know, when you're a fan, you have that optimism of, I think it can get better if only these things happen. But when you know how the organization works at a fundamental level, and you've seen it, and just something like it's just things that you see that you wouldn't normally. Of course, if you take a tour of the friggin' Star, you probably get a chance to see it. You're just not there that long. But if you see it over and over again, you're like, well, this is how it is. You know, I'm like, I don't enter any year with any optimism at all. And when I was going to Cowboys training camp every year, I'd come back here and you'd be like, and people would say, Paul, are the Cowboys going to be any good? I'm like, all I know is that they can beat the Cowboys. That's it.
Yeah.
I've only seen them play the Cowboys.
Yeah.
And even then, not at full speed, really. So they can beat themselves. That's all I know.
I had a similar experience in my 2 years in Sacramento covering the Kings. I was definitely, had a very similar experience when you kind of get a little bit of a glimpse of how the sausage is made. Mm-hmm. You kind of, not that has affected my fandom. It hasn't. But at the same time, too, I realized it made me probably, nobody admitted this to me, but I was probably an unpopular media figure for 2 years there because of how, honest I was about their misfortunes. So when you're a little too close to it, you like to think it doesn't affect you or it doesn't affect how you go about your business from a professional standpoint but it creeps in there. It does. It's unavoidable.
No, it's true. I mean, I remember going to cover a game that the Cowboys played against the Bears on a Monday night.
Yeah.
And
in Dallas or Chicago? In Dallas.
In Dallas.
I think I might know which game this is, actually.
It was the game where Brandon Marshall ate the Cowboys for lunch.
Yes.
I mean, absolutely. And the thing is, when there's another national fan base like the Steelers, the Bears, the Packers, the Niners, that have fans everywhere, the Raiders.
Yeah.
It's not the case when they play like the Ravens or the Bengals. I mean, there's always fans from other teams there. Sure. But if you have those teams that just have, they're my favorite team because my dad loved Terry Bradshaw or, my family's from Chicago and now I live here in Dallas, so I'm a Bears fan. There were just tons of, I saw more Brian Urlacher jerseys than Tony Romo jerseys that night.
Yeah.
And they absolutely drilled him. And, what's his name? His name was Carr. Brandon Carr. Brandon Carr was the cornerback who got absolutely destroyed by Brandon Marshall all night long. And you do have to feel bad for him. And we were going to the locker room after we talked to Jerry Jones, and which is a thing in and of itself. And we walked to we're walking over, and I see Jerry made a beeline, and I simultaneously respected this about Jerry and then was mad at him for it. Brandon Carr was, and like now that I'm outside the situation, I understand why he did it, and he should have done it. Brandon Carr was just heartbroken about how badly he'd gotten beaten. And then you also know that, you start thinking, the next year, Brandon Carr wasn't with the team, and he was, kind of bounced around for a little bit before he ultimately retired. That was one of those games where it might hit you that, I don't know if I can do this the same way I did. Because Brandon Carr was a really good player for a good number of years in the league, but Brandon Marshall destroyed. I mean, he could not do anything on him all night long.
Yeah.
And looking back at it now, outside the emotions of the situation, I'm like, oh, well, yeah. I mean, everybody has to deal with their age and, moving on in periods of the life. And especially when you're a professional athlete, it has to hit you in a different way, than it does a normal person. But I watched Jerry Jones go over and give him a hug and give him a little pep talk. And the fan part of me was like, no.
Yeah.
No.
Cut him on the spot.
Yeah. You know what? Rip his shoulder pads off right now.
Yeah.
Give me his helmet. We will burn it. That was how I felt in my part of my brain. And then I was like, well, let me go over here and talk to Tyron Smith. No, I'm not going to talk to Tyron Smith. He looks mad. Let's go over and talk to somebody. And so that's what I did. But I remember thinking like the emotional part of it. And then when I was driving home that night, I thought, well, that wasn't very professional of me to have those thoughts. And I think the Cowboys have now poisoned my brain a little bit trying to get this back. Now, I am very good at criticizing them and not going overboard with it. I'm not like now the angry dude. I just will tell you how it is. So I'll just tell you right now, this is the roughest season doing what I do and being a fan of that team ever, because Jerry Jones has always been the best owner and the worst GM. Well, now he's not really that good of an owner. And that's where it starts to be like, oh, this is hard to watch because I don't know the decisions are being made are really flowing through Jerry at full speed anymore. Because you can tell he's getting angry in places where before he would just be like, you know.
You remember the radio spat that he had earlier in the season with the radio host?
Sean and Bobby and RJ. Friends of ours. Yeah.
When I saw that, I'm not going to lie, that raised my eyebrows. I was like, oh, that's, for as much heat as Jerry and the Cowboys take, not only from local media, but from national media as well, to his credit, Jerry takes it all with a grain of salt. Like he doesn't miss a beat. He's stride for stride in his thought process. Emotionally, he seems very in check with everything that's going on, despite repeated protests from media and fans to fire coaches or bench quarterbacks. Jerry seems very even keeled, which has I've always noticed, and it surprised me to an extent. Yeah. But when that happened earlier this year, I think you're onto something. That was my first indication of, oh, it's starting to get to him, or there's a crack in the armor here from Jerry. I don't know how this is going to play out.
Yeah, no, I mean that's how I felt. So for you, Mr. Dolphins fan, who's had to wait even longer.
Yes,
here's the thing, in your lifetime, you have never experienced a Dolphins Super Bowl win.
Correct.
And for a large chunk of your life now, you have not experienced a Dolphins postseason win.
I remember where I was and who they were playing. The last time they got a playoff victory, was in the year 2000. They were hosting the Colts. Lamar Miller was the star. Or no, sorry, not Lamar Miller. Who was their running back? Now it's escaping me. But I do remember Jay Fiedler was the quarterback. They beat the Colts in overtime. And then
Cecil Collins.
He went to jail.
Okay.
But what was his name? He had like 2 good years with Jay Fiedler. It wasn't Lamar Miller. Lamar Miller was 10 or 6, 7, 8 years ago. It'll come to me. Why do I keep thinking Lamar?
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
No, he was a first-round bust disaster of a pick. But either way, not only have I not seen this team in the Super Bowl, I've never even seen them make it to an AFC championship game in terms of my fandom. The last time that happened, I believe, was 92 when they lost to Buffalo. And that was before I was really I was a fan, but I wasn't really exactly conscious of it at the time. So what I would like, here's my issue with this, because I think Chris Greer's tenure and this is the other problem with Stephen Ross. Stephen Ross as an owner is like you said about Jerry.
Lamar Smith, by the way.
That's who it is. Lamar Smith. Lamar Smith, who had a year, 1 or 2 good years for the Dolphins that year. I think he might have had 200 yards in that game against the Colts in that playoff game, if I'm not mistaken. But I digress. Stephen Ross is the kind of owner I tell fans all the time, this is the kind of owner you want. A guy who's got a big pocketbook and for the most part steps out of the way and just signs the checks. You listen to your people, you say, we want this guy or that guy. Guess what? We'll make it happen. I'll sign the check. But Chris Grier has run the credit card one too many times, and the bill came due this offseason. And when they were stripped of some talent in the offseason, I said to myself, this team is not going to win more than 9 games at best this season. And now remember a few weeks ago when they were sitting there 2-4, I was on this very show and I said, make no mistake about it, their season is over. And then at 2-6, when I see some people saying, oh, this team is capable of making a run into the postseason, I said, stop it. Stop it right now. I mean, and I want the entire training staff of this team, the strength and conditioning coaches, I want them all fired. Everyone gets hurt at every single week, every single practice. Somebody is hurt. Somebody's out for the season. Somebody's out for multiple weeks. I mean, Zach Sealer had his orbital bone broken in practice a couple of weeks ago, missed a couple of games. How in the world does this happen? Like, everybody on this team is a walking chandelier, and it's only a matter of time before one of them is out again for the rest of the season. We just lost Austin Jackson, starting right tackle for the rest of the season. Bradley Chubb hasn't made it back from his torn ACL yet. Not that I blame him. Rehab all you need. But, I mean, Javon Holland, in and out of the lineup, concussion, hand injury. Tyreek Hill revealed that he's got a torn ligament in his wrist that happened in training camp. Where's the strength and conditioning team for this team? Everybody's dropping like flies. Fire the whole staff.
This is exactly what I wanted. And I knew, look, when Steven had his rant yesterday, I said, well, I know where a well of rant is, and it's Pierre for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, we're gonna create his own podcast called Pierre's Well of Rants.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be Pierre. Did you ever watch Brockmire?
Oh, I didn't watch. I didn't get a chance to watch the show, but I'm well aware of the character and everything. Okay. Yes.
Yeah. Watch it.
Yeah.
You'll wind up binging it. I know you'll love it.
Oh,
But there's a part of it where he's living in New Orleans and he's like a AAA baseball announcer, and he's making a lot of money doing a podcast where he gets drunk and high, and then somebody gives him a topic, and then he just talks until the end of the story. And so it starts out one way, and then, of course, it cuts away and comes back, and he's telling a completely different story. It's like, so there were me and Kirstie Alley and the rest of the Veronica's Closet Riders that left. He's just like doing that. But that's the podcast I want you to do.
Yeah.
Is I'm just gonna slide you, a bit of your favorite beverage.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna get in the audience, and they're gonna shout out a topic. And then you're just going to go on a rant about it.
I feel for every prospective media business owner too, when they watch that podcast, I would like to plead and negotiate that I get immunity from anything that I say on that podcast, because I can go in a million different directions.
Yeah, no, I absolutely know that. Like, well, here's the thing. I would be there with you every step of the way.
I know you would.
We're only gonna do it live.
Yeah.
We're not gonna do it in a studio. It's gonna be in front of an audience so that the audience can shout things out. And then if you start to go, I'm gonna have like a water pistol or something where I'll just spray you a little bit, and then you be like, okay, sorry.
Just like a cat. Just like a cat approaching the Christmas tree.
Yeah, that's what we'll do. And then we'll be like, hey, while Pierre cools down before the next topic, let's talk to you about our sponsor. And then we do a sponsor read. Like I could say, welcome to our newest sponsor, and this is true. Our newest sponsor here at 365 Sports and Triple Option, Best Buy.
Beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
Yes.
They have headquarters. They've got a big old office here in town in Minneapolis.
Yeah. So they're one of our many sponsors, but Best Buy has come aboard. So welcome aboard to Best Buy.